Have you ever played games like Taboo, Heads Up, or Fishbowl, which is a personal favorite at Midlothian? You have to try to take clues that your friends or teammates give you and try to figure out what's on the card or the little device. And now I'm not competitive, but I will challenge anyone to try and beat me in Heads Up. It is pretty rare that my team does not dominate, and it is my absolute favorite game. And personally, I feel like I'm pretty amazing at picking up the clues that my partner is putting down, and I will go rapid speed answering any questions in the speed round. But in everyday life and in everyday scenarios, sometimes coming up with the right answer is a little bit more challenging than a game. Like maybe when you don't study for a test, or it's a question about relationships, faith, or a decision that you need to make. We all need help finding answers sometimes. And if you've ever felt like it's tough to know what's true, what's right, and what's good, I get it. It is complicated sometimes. But how do you decide who to be friends with or who to date? What should you believe on the latest hot take, or how should you navigate the tricky situation that maybe you have found yourself in? In situations like these, we need wisdom, and we can find that by making the exchange. I found myself in this position, like I mentioned a moment ago, right after I graduated from high school. I had been dating a guy for about 2 years, and he went away to college about 4 hours away, and I stayed here and went to community college. See, in high school, we had a textbook healthy relationship. He surprised me on my birthday with breakfast and with flowers, listened to all the little things, and I would send him care packages at school full of things I thought that he would need or that he would like. And it was great until the distance was not just the miles in between us. We started drifting apart, and it didn't become noticeable until I came back from my first mission trip. I realized what my relationship had been missing: God. Now, he went to church to hear me sing on occasion or on holidays, and I went with his family to Christmas Mass, but in our everyday relationship, it was definitely not a priority. And when I asked him point blank if he believed in God, he said no. Talk about a sucker punch to the gut kind of moment. I got hit with my own tough decision. What do I do? I called Angie and Elijah, two of my mentors whom I trusted, and we met to talk about the looming "what do I do" question and how do I make this work? Well, our relationship was not a match anymore, and not believing in God was a deal breaker for me. But I did wrestle with this decision for a long time. I went back and forth on what would happen if I stayed and what would happen if I went. And I'm not currently with this guy anymore. I'm currently married to my lovely husband, Caleb, whom I actually met on that first mission trip that I mentioned. But the internal debate that I had with that situation was not easy. And to be honest, it would have been great if I could have just opened up my Bible, turned to page like 352, and read an answer written specifically to me on my exact situation. But of course, it does not work like that. So, what do we do when we need the answers? Well, it probably depends on the situation. Like I mentioned some tough situations earlier and shared a personal struggle that I had, but what about you? Do you have someone that you can go to when you need answers? For me at that moment, I had two people, and I knew that they would tell me what I needed to hear and not what I wanted to hear. And in our last series, Real, we talked about how to find and build relationships like this. And if something that you need to go in your life, I highly recommend to go back and check out that series. But with friends or mentors, we might have a great group of people to give advice in one situation, but can feel completely alone in another. Sometimes a friend might come to us for advice, but we're not even sure if we are qualified to help. And sometimes we'll meet a problem or situation that is so big that we're not even sure how to find the right answer. And I'm sure we have all been there when a friend has dropped a story bomb that is quite shocking or unexpected, and you just sit there unable to formulate the words to express your thoughts on the matter. Trust me, I have been there. See, I think sometimes we feel inadequate to answer some of the tough questions that maybe we don't know enough Bible verses to tell someone, or that we don't think we're wise enough. But like most situations, there is something in the Bible that I think might help us out right now. In the first week of exchange, we were introduced to two guys named Paul and Timothy. Paul was the older, more experienced follower of Jesus who had a lot of wisdom to share with Timothy, whom he was mentoring. But Timothy had a lot of wisdom to share too, not just with Paul, but with all the people that Timothy was leading. See, both Paul and Timothy were dedicated to helping some of the earliest followers of Jesus figure out what to do and what to believe about Jesus' teachings. But there was a problem. Because Jesus' movement was brand new and it was spreading very quickly, people ended up spreading some incorrect or misleading ideas about who Jesus was and what he came to do. The final message was almost always a half-false combination of the original message, and in Jesus' scenario, without leadership from people like Paul or Timothy and a few others, Jesus' message was at risk of being confused and distorted. See, Timothy was a young leader in the church where false teachings were spreading and was in desperate need of discernment. Discernment is the ability to know what to do in an uncertain situation. And we're going to take a look at 2 Timothy in the Bible to help us flesh out this definition a little bit better. And this particular chapter gives us so many amazing, specific things on discernment. We're just going to take a look at the first two verses. Remember Jesus Christ, raised from the dead, descended from David. This is my gospel for which I am suffering, even to the point of being chained like a criminal. But God's word is not chained. Timothy needed discernment to navigate a tricky situation. Paul told Timothy to always remember Jesus. This is the entire reason that they're doing everything that they're doing, to remember and to remind others often about what God has said. That we shouldn't waste our time in arguing about the little things. That we have to do our best to discern what is true, especially when it comes to what to believe about God. To run away from things that are evil and to run towards things that are good and Jesus-like. With these words, Paul stepped into Timothy's situation and gave him clarity, and he did so by giving him practical advice and pointing him back to Jesus. Paul knew that reminding people about the truth of Jesus would help them discern between what is true about him and what is false. But I think Paul also knew that pointing people back to Jesus would remind them to look at the way that Jesus had lived and what Jesus said, and to make the choices that Jesus made. When we're stuck about what to do, to think, or to believe, we can remember Jesus, like Paul told Timothy to do. If the decision we're making or opinion we're holding or the way we're acting doesn't look like Jesus, then it's probably not what we should be doing, thinking, or believing. Because the wisdom that he had gained, Paul knew remembering Jesus would help Timothy know how to tell the difference between a truth and a lie, to make wise decisions and to discern what to do. See, Paul could see how this exchange of wisdom could continue to happen again and again and again, and if he shared his wisdom with Timothy, Timothy would share his wisdom with those around him, and it would continue on and so forth. But sometimes it still seemed a little bit difficult to know what is God's best in an unclear situation. After all, we don't exactly have a Bible verse on choosing a college or dealing with an awkward breakup like I did. So in addition to the book of Timothy, we're going to take a look at the book of Proverbs. It is a book in the Bible known for its practical advice and wisdom. Lots of these little bits of wisdom were written by someone named Solomon. They're short and they're easy for us to remember, understand, and to apply. So Solomon was great at helping others develop discernment in the days he lived, and he is still helping us to do so now. So what does Solomon suggest that we do when we don't know what to do? Trust in the Lord with all of your heart and lean not unto your own understanding. In all of your ways submit to him, and he will make your paths straight. See, ultimately, Solomon reminds us that wisdom and discernment come from God. But if we want it, we have to start by trusting God, not ourselves. So when we don't know what to do, we have to admit that we need help and to look to God. We remember Jesus and everything we know to be true about him. We use his life and his teachings as a guide for running forward, running towards what is like him and running away from things that are not. And like Paul and Timothy demonstrated, we don't try to figure it out alone. There is wisdom to be gained from those who are around us, and we can help each other develop discernment. See, asking questions is not a sign of weakness, it's a sign of wisdom. So when you need discernment, admit that you're unsure. Like Solomon advised, we don't trust in your own ability to know the right answers. And like Elijah mentioned at Rise, we don't know everything. And it's okay to admit when you're unsure on what to do. Secondly, ask for help. If we're not open to getting help or even humble enough to ask, we're going to have a hard time developing the discernment that we need. So who is in your life that can help? Now, they don't need to be perfect, they don't need to be an expert, but who in your life reminds you of Jesus and could help you make some decisions about your next steps? Maybe it's a trusted small group leader or one of us, your campus coordinators. We would absolutely love to get the chance to hear you out and to help you in the best way that we can give. And lastly, practice helping others. Now, you don't need to be perfect or an expert, like I mentioned, to help someone else develop discernment. But to do that, we just need to share about what we know and be honest about what we don't. We have to be willing to change our mind as you continue to develop and to grow more discernment. No matter how old we are, this is just one way that we can exchange wisdom with the people around us. When things seem confusing or unclear, we can help each other develop discernment.